If you're tuning into this session, you might be wondering, what are science-based targets? You may have heard of them from some of your suppliers or customers, but we want to work together to align on the basics. The IPCC, or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, emphasizes the fact that we're already experiencing the impacts of climate change, such as frequent and severe weather events hitting communities around the globe. Based on these critical needs and recent impacts, we noticed and defined that we must limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. As a part of this shift, we're moving from an environment where businesses and companies are voluntarily reporting their greenhouse gas emissions to ones where new and emerging climate regulations are requiring greenhouse gas emissions reporting and climate reporting associated with emission reduction activities. You may already know this, and a good thing to note is that the healthcare industry is a leading one, as you can see all of these headlines on your screen now. Global companies across the healthcare industry have made climate commitments to decarbonize and contribute towards the health of our planet as well as people. Here are just some screenshots of those commitments, and we'll leverage some of these commitments and examples just like these as we go through this course. So one thing I'd be remiss not to mention is the Paris Agreement was a legally binding international treaty on climate change. It was adopted by 196 parties at COP21 in Paris on December 15th of 2015, and was ultimately entered into and put into effect on November 4th of 2016. Its goal is to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees, preferably aligned to 1.5 degrees, as I mentioned before, compared to pre-industrial levels. Pre-industrial levels really means the period between 1850 and 1900, before the start of the Industrial Revolution. And to achieve this long-term goal that all these parties agreed to, countries aim to reach the global peaking of greenhouse gas emissions as soon as possible, which means they're going to stop increasing their emissions and move towards slowing them and reducing them to be able to achieve net zero across the world by mid-century of 2050. There are two global standard setting options for companies to align your goals to those goals of the Paris Agreement. Science-based targets, or SBT, are a set of goals developed by businesses to provide a route to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions in alignment with climate science. An emission reduction target is defined as science-based if it's developed in alignment with the scale of reduction required to limit global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius from pre-industrial levels, consistent with what they've agreed upon in the Paris Climate Agreement, as well as those things that I mentioned from the IPCC. So this is just to give you an idea of the popularity and progress of the science-based targets initiatives around the world. More than 34% of high-impact companies across the world have set these science-based targets, some of which are brands that may have invited you here today or ones that you're seeing in the news. Furthermore, over 10,000 companies have either set or committed to setting high-quality science-based targets as of today, and this number has been growing exponentially, and we expect it to become even more popular moving forward. So that brings us to the end of the introduction of what are science-based targets.